Hello and welcome back in. So today I wanted to go over the week in review for October 15th to October 21st. Just like last week, I was hoping to get this video out on the Sunday after the conclusion of the week. Unfortunately, life does get in the way of videos sometimes, so I am going to do it today. Sometimes they'll come out Sunday, sometimes they'll come out Monday, depending on when I can do them. But yeah, we'll go over all the records for the teams. I think I'm going to do the records first, then the points, point percentages, and then go through all the notes, and then just the little player notes down below here. So Anaheim had one win and two losses last week. Arizona had two losses and two wins. Calgary had one win, one regulation loss, and one overtime or shootout loss. Chicago started the week strong with a win, but lost their next two in regulation. Colorado had a really strong week, winning all three of their games. Dallas had one overtime or shootout loss and two wins. Edmonton had one win, one loss, and one overtime or shootout loss. Los Angeles had two wins and one loss. Minnesota had one win and two regulation losses. Nashville had one regulation loss and two wins. St. Louis had one regulation loss and one win last week. San Jose lost all three of their games in regulation. Seattle had one loss, one win, and one overtime or shootout loss. Vancouver had two regulation losses and one win. Vegas won all three of their games last week, and Winnipeg had two regulation losses and one win. Boston had two regulation wins. Buffalo had two wins and one regulation loss. Carolina had one win and three regulation losses, so their record's really starting to not look good now. Columbus had one loss and two wins. Detroit won all three of their games to the surprise of a few people. Florida had two wins and one regulation loss. Montreal had one regulation loss and one win. New Jersey also had one regulation loss and one win. The New York Islanders had one win and two regulation losses. The New York Rangers had two wins and one regulation loss. Ottawa had two wins and one regulation loss as well. Philadelphia had two wins and one shootout or overtime loss, so their record's still looking pretty good under John Tortorella's systems. Pittsburgh lost both of their games last week in regulation. Tampa Bay surprisingly had one win, two shootout or overtime losses, and a regulation loss. Toronto had two regulation losses and one win. And Washington got 50% on one win, one overtime or shootout loss, and one regulation loss. So this week the records balanced out a little bit more. There wasn't quite the same disparity that we had seen previously. And as expected, the Pacific caught up a little bit more in their points percentage this week than they were last week, which I do believe was hovering around the 36% of total points that they got. Now, the divisional points percentage for the Western or the conference points percentage is 52.08. The Pacific rang in 47.92 of their total possible points. The Central came in at 56.25 of their total points. So that came down quite a bit from what it was last week. The Eastern Conference got 56.77% of all total available points. The Atlantic had a really strong week, coming in at 66.67% of their available points, and the Metro bringing up the tail of the league at 46.88%. So those are a little bit more so balanced than we had seen last week, and I figure this is going to happen throughout the season. But I won't be surprised if one division or the other starts to rise and fall and ebb and flow as we would expect to see throughout the season. So some notes that I had taken. Vegas is 6-0-0 to start the season, so they've got a perfect six-game record up to this point. I do believe they had the same start in 2017 when they joined the league. So they're off to a roaring start, and it doesn't look like it has any sign of slowing down. Last week, I did make a note when they were 3-0-0, the quality of their opponents. I don't think it got a whole lot better in the eyes of most people, but the fact that they are in a 6-game winning streak is nothing short of impressive. Boston has picked up a 4-0-0 start to their season, so they're coming out of the gate hot as well. They have a combined goaltending of .949 save percentage and a 151 goals against average. So both of their goaltenders are playing extremely well and picking up exactly where they had left off at the end of last season. I think the big surprise to Boston's start is they are down uh, Patrice Bergeron and David Krejci. So they were expected to come down in the standings a little bit. Looks like they had other plans. So yeah, that's always exciting. Now on the flip side, the Edmonton Oilers have gone 1-3-1 to start the season, and they are having significant issues in their goaltending with a combined 867 save percentage and a 398 goals against average. And they have not scored a goal in the third period yet. They're the only team left in the league that hasn't. That was a bit of a weird cherry picked stat that I just came across. So I'm like, you know what? Let's throw that in there to kind of illustrate some of the struggle that they're having. I will include this in next week's week in review, but because this came out a day late, it's also been found that Connor McDavid could be out 1 to 2 weeks with an upper body injury. So if it rains, it pours in Edmonton right now, I guess. So that's unfortunate. Hopefully, he makes a speedy recovery and the Edmonton Oilers can kind of right the ship before the season starts to tank on them, being that they have the likes of Leon Draisaitl and Connor McDavid when Connor McDavid's in the lineup. I don't anticipate this is going to last long. When you have those two firing on all cylinders, you kind of are perpetually required to be given a chance at that point. So we'll see how that goes as time moves forward. And I also made a note of the Flyers. At the time I'd pulled the stat, which was Sunday night. The Flyers were the top of the Metro Division at 3-1-1, so they're off to a roaring good start. A lot better than I think anybody had anticipated they would be. But again, being early in the season, that could balance off, so we'll have to see where they wind up a little closer to, say, the end of November to see if they're still in that spot and trying to hold for a playoff position by then. Colorado has started the season strong as well. So this is the third undefeated team and the last one left on the list. They are 5-0-0 to start the season. Not much of a surprise. Colorado's been good for the last few years. I imagine this is just a nice, strong start indicative of probably them having another strong season. So the next thing that I wanted to go over was some stats that I had pulled. So Dallas actually has the top penalty kill right now at 100% on 12 attempts. So Dallas hopes to keep that rolling. Detroit has the top power play at 50%, and that's 9 goals on 18 attempts. They also have the top goals for per game at 4.80, which is 24 goals for on 5 games played. I imagine that number is going to come a little bit closer back to reality as time moves on. But this could be a sign that Detroit's starting to round that curve everyone's been expecting them to under the tenure of general manager Steve Yzerman. So maybe that's a sign of things to come, which would be good, but we'll see how things move along. Boston has the top goals against per game at 1.50, which is 6 goals against on 4 games played. So slightly smaller sample size, but their goaltending, like I'd pointed out, is doing really, really, really well. So can't argue with that. Washington, on the other side, has the worst goals for per game at 1.25 per game, which is 5 goals for in 4 games played. Washington is really not looking like the Washington that most people are accustomed to. So it's a little bit odd that their goal scoring specifically is as low as it is. So we'll have to keep an eye on that and see what that does to the um, to everyone following Ovechkin's goal scoring race against Gretzky. So Carolina is also bringing up the bottom of the goals against per game at 5 per game. So they've got 30 goals against on 6 games played. That is not going to get you into the playoffs. Um, Head coach Rod Brind'amour is looking to correct that in short order. Hopefully, this is just a sign of just a struggle start out of the gate, and they can, like the Edmonton Oilers, kind of correct what they need to get themselves back to where we expect them to be. And now for a little bit of injury news. Everything that I pull into the list for this video will be a player that they're not out day to day or they're a game time decision. This is a player that has been announced as going on IR or LTIR. So that I'm not tracking all the little bumps and bruises out for a game for, conditioning or precautionary things like that. Starting with the first one that came up in the week, Kirby Dach will be out for the remainder of the season for Montreal. That's unfortunate. Dach only got a few games into the season, hoping to have a rebound season and kind of bounce back, but looks like that's not going to be in the cards this season for him. Gabriel Velarde in the Winnipeg Jets is going to be out 4 to 6 weeks with an MCL sprain. Alex Goligoski in Minnesota went on to IR for a lower body. At the time I'd looked, there was no indication for how long he would be out, but just that he is on IR. Goaltender Charlie Lindgren for the Washington Capitals will be on IR, lower body. Again, same thing, no indication as to how long at the time I had checked. And Cody Glass for Nashville will be on IR for 7 to 10 days, citing lower body. So they weren't really any more transparent than that, so I can only pull the information that they give me. So yeah, if anybody's got any of these players in a fantasy pool or something, you might want to consider finding a secondary option for a little bit. And then we're going to move on to a few player highlights that I had come across that kind of surprised me a little bit. So I want to start with Evan Rodriguez in Florida. So he got 3 assists in the game against Vancouver. Sean Monahan with Montreal so far is at 2 goals, 2 assists for 4 points in 4 games played. So currently riding about a point per game. And that was a little bit of a surprise to me. When Sean Monahan had been traded to Montreal, it had seemed like his shot was starting to go. Just something wasn't right. He'd fought with a lot of injuries over the last few years. So to see that he's rounding back into form, Montreal's kind of crossing their fingers and hoping that he can keep that up through the regular season, and that would be a huge help to them, especially on their. I would think he's their second line center, maybe. So yeah, Corey Perry in Chicago is actually having quite the start to the season for himself. He has 6 games played, 2 goals, 3 assists for 5 points. The one thing that can easily get lost in translation from younger fans is back in the late 2000s, early 2010s, Corey Perry was quite the goal scorer and quite the offensive force, combined with the fact that he had no problem being a pest and getting under everybody's skin along the way. So to see that he's kind of rounding back into form a little bit at his age, I wouldn't expect for him to look like former Corey Perry at the end of the season. But the fact that he's starting off the season strong was a little bit interesting to see. And I wanted to highlight a couple goaltenders because I didn't mention any last week, so I pulled a couple that would have gotten at least a handful of games in now. Carter Hart is starting out his season very well. Again, a goaltender that is very divisive, both within the Philly fan base and outside of it. but in 4 games played, he currently has a 929 save percentage and a 2.01 goals against. So he is doing phenomenal, and Coach Tortorella is hoping that that continues. That will go a long way to Philly's record improving. Carter Hart had that first really strong year when he was a rookie, and then it's been kind of a mixed bag throughout since, and hasn't never really had much points between then and now that have looked like the Carter Hart everyone was hoping for when they saw him break out that first year. And then Jordan Binnington. So he's got a little bit smaller of a sample size. But Jordan Binnington's had a few struggles over the last few seasons, but he started off so far with 3 games played, a 959 save percentage, and a 1.26 goals against average. So he's starting off very strong. Just like in Philly, Craig Berube in St. Louis is hoping that Jordan Binnington continues to play this way. That will also go a long way to improving St. Louis's record, as long as he gets the goal support. But there was a conversation between Berube and Binnington last year that was, I would imagine, a lot more one-sided, to stop with the antics, stop with the after the whistle, the stop focusing on pestering everyone else, just get in the net, play. And as soon as that conversation happened last year, uh, Binnington's Binnington's play improved dramatically. And so I'm thinking it's going to be a lot of the same stuff throughout this year. Stay focused. Don't worry about what they're doing. Stop trying to get under everyone's skin. Just get in the net and stop the pucks. That's your job. Just worry about that. And if he can do that, I would imagine that Binnington will come back into form looking like a top 10 goaltender, like he has shown he is very capable of being. So yeah, those were just the few things that I managed to pull this week. Uh, Let me know what you found throughout the week, and if there's anything that I missed of noteworthy. Again, I don't have an extensive and in-depth view on everything, but these were the things I came across that I thought were noteworthy. So yeah, we'll see what this next week brings to us. And if you did like the video, don't forget to drop a like. If you really liked it, don't forget to subscribe on your way over to your next video. And yeah, until the next video, thank you and all the best.